February workshop, Best Practices for Project Kickoffs. Today, I'm going to share how I kick off a new client engagement, including my plan for the first 30 days and roll. And importantly, how I prepare for a steering committee meeting. Get this right. My goal is to not stumble through this and to make this easy and consumable. So we're going to run through it in under 25 minutes, and we're going to leave you with this recording and with our set of resources. But before we dive in, why should you listen to me? Well, because I've been there. I've helped businesses grow from 1 to 10 billion. I've been a consultant with the Boston Consulting Group, and I've been an independent consultant and now the CEO of Keenan Reid Strategies for over 10 years. And in short, I've been in your shoes and I have made a lot of mistakes. And now I am sharing what I've learned so you don't have to make the same ones. So let's get started. Today, you're going to learn a couple of things. First, I'm going to take you through ways to establish your credibility with your client team, starting from day one. Then I'll shift focus to what I think is the key event during the first month of work, the steering committee kickoff. Here, I'll talk through the objectives of the session, the structure, and how I prepare for this meeting, or better yet said, this discussion. And we'll share our best resources to do all of this work, including our PowerPoint kickoff template, the stakeholder map I use to organize who's who, and the interview guide I use with stakeholders to make sure I ask the right questions and give the right context. And throughout the workshop, I'll point out a couple of tips and a couple of frameworks from our community that I think will help too. So let's get started with how I structure my time. I look at the kickoff period as my first 30 days in role. And during this time, there's 3 things I'm looking to accomplish. First, starting on day 1, I want to build a relationship with the client that's based on trust. Next, by the end of week 1, I want to have established my credibility with the team. That means I'm already delivering value that I promised when I walk out of the door on Friday. And by the end of the first month, I want to have engaged executive audiences. I do this by organizing stakeholders into a steering committee and running a formal kickoff meeting where I lead a discussion around my emerging insights. And in that meeting, I'll say now, there's 2 important things that I'm trying to accomplish. 1, I want to get executives to buy in that there's a problem and it needs a solution. And 2, I want to get their perspectives on that problem early so that I can integrate them into the analyses and solutions. And I'm doing this because I know I'm going to have to come back and align the solution with them at the end. And if I incorporate their opinions now at the beginning, it makes that alignment a whole lot easier. All right, so let's get started. Day 1. Let's spend a minute on the day you walk in the door. Now, like I said, on this day, you're going to spend your time focused solely on relationships. Why? Well, you can't add value without being a trusted part of the team. And that means you have to connect as a professional and as a human being from day 1. And yes, this goes back to one of my favorite old sayings that I repeat to myself and I will repeat to you again and again. And that is, you have to work the people as hard as you work the problem. It always seems obvious when I say that, but I feel like as a problem solver, I used to find it hard to prioritize the people when there's so much work to be done. So here's the thing. On day 1, you can ask questions. Plan to spend this day actively listening. I like to get the primary client into a room with a marker board and just have them lay it out all on me. I start with a structure, but then I let the conversation run freely. And during that, I'm trying to cover a couple things. What's the problem and what are the potential causes? 2, who are the stakeholders and what's the organizational and political dynamics that we're dealing with? 3, what constraints are we under and what cannot be changed? And 4, what's been tried before to solve the problem? How did that go? What worked? What didn't work? What are the kind of the learnings from what's been tried in the past? Now, here's the thing. As you're listening and asking about the problem, I want you to focus on building the human relationship as well. And in the in-between times, when you take a break, I want you to ask questions that help find what I call their personal spark. This is the thing that lights up their face. Okay, ask what they do outside of work, about their partner, their kids, pets, sports, travel, anything. Ask these questions until you find that thing that gives them the spark. And then You don't need to know anything about that. All you need to do is just ask questions to get to know them and understand how they participate in this activity or what they like about it. You're just trying to find that personal connection. So for example, I have a client who I learned is an emergency wilderness rescue volunteer. Now, I know absolutely nothing about the outdoors, nor does it look like that. But we have built a wonderful relationship by me just asking questions about what is truly a really interesting topic. And it's not something that he actively talks about. I had to ask a lot of questions to find the thing that he was interested in. But once I did, it really changed our relationship. So spend time here from day one. All right, that's day one. Now let's talk about what you want to leave the building with on Friday. It's time to start delivering, and your goal is to establish credibility. Now, a word on credibility. You are not going to establish credibility by telling them who you are. You are going to establish credibility by actually delivering. And here, I advise you to do this by doing two things, okay, by the time you close that computer on Friday. One, you will have documented one page that simply defines the problem. And two, you will solve what I call a paper cut problem. This is a small annoyance that for some reason, no one else has solved, but you will. And when you do this, they will believe in you. So let's take a look at that first go do. How do you document the problem statement? Well, you can't solve a problem you can't define. So in order for you to do your work, you've got to get the team to a simple definition of that problem and have everyone agree that it needs to be solved. Now, this sounds simple, but in almost every client project, I've walked into rooms full of complexity and emotion. In fact, I sometimes think that the greatest value that I add in this first month is just by making things simple and starting to make them objective. The common behavior I see when I arrive on the site is, in George Costanza's words, the airing of the grievances. Now, I know you guys have been there. When you start asking questions about the problem, especially when you start to bring in that working level team, the first responses are going to tend to be reactive and they're going to be emotional. And I have found that that emotion has to be aired out in order to bring folks back to being objective. So you have to plan for this time, okay? I plan for these conversations. I give them time and space across the first few days in role. Meanwhile, I'm internally categorizing what I hear. I'm searching for the pieces that matter, and I'm empathizing with them while trying to find those nuggets of insight. And as these grievances are aired, the emotions will begin to recede. And at that point, you can start to recenter the team and try to identify root causes. Now here, as you see on the slide, I like to use the 5 whys, which is a simple McKinsey discussion exercise that helps people identify root causes quickly. Now, I like to do this as a discussion with a marker board. So you can picture in a room, small discussion room, marker board. And essentially, this is easy. You're going to lead an exercise and ask why 5 times, which sounds very basic. But by the 3rd or 4th why, it will get unexpectedly hard. It will force everyone's minds to start to categorize information and separate what matters from what doesn't. And when the team lands on the right why, you'll find something magical happens. All of a sudden, we've identified a problem we can solve. Now, your job is to get that problem simply refined on paper. So here, I'm sharing a framework that we use to turn these problem-focused discussions into solid deliverables. I call this for short the SCI framework, but it's situation, complication, implication framework is a great tool for this. And you can find this PowerPoint template along with the 5 whys back on in our strategic frameworks space in the community. This framework captures the context that is contributing to the problem, the complications and challenges we need to look at, and the implications show the case for change. And finally, it's going to help you net out a simple problem statement. Now, the act of completing this document is going to help you create momentum for the work. You're moving the team again from complexity and emotion to clarity and objectivity in a week. And now at the end of that week, you have a simple page that you can start to shop around to all of the cross-functional stakeholders to get their buy-in on the problem. And that's important. And we're going to come back to it in a second. Now, I mentioned the paper cut problem. This is all about getting a quick win, okay? I try to find this paper cut problem and solve it. Just like a paper cut, this is the tiny annoyance that drives everyone crazy. So my advice here is look for this and fix it. Is it standardizing a PowerPoint template? Building a template for a monthly business review? Maybe it's writing a series of update emails everyone has been avoiding. I have even written people's performance reviews, and I have written the performance reviews for their direct reports. Frankly, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it's in your scope. Doing this shows that you can make stuff happen, okay? And you want to make stuff happen. And when you do, the client is going to begin to see you as a person who can get things done. All right, we're about to get to that kickoff, but I want to do a quick detour here before we get into the meat. It goes without saying, but to be effective, you need to be connected to the client's IT systems. IT is always going to be painful for you. Never make it painful for them, okay? It may take hours of time to get connected, but you have to get on the client Wi-Fi, access their systems, get the ID badge, whatever they require. Just do it fast, and don't make it annoying for anyone. This is a case where you may want to ask for an introduction to an admin or someone really junior on the team to help you navigate. That's the person you can ask these sorts of questions to, okay? But this is important. Once you are all logged in, get them a small gift, a compliant gift, but a small gift to say thanks. A book, chocolates, a back pillow, whatever you learned, because remember, you're asking questions to get to know them. Something that shows that you appreciate the annoyance and time that they've put into helping you get set up. All right, so now let's move to the first big deliverable, the steering committee kickoff. But first, what is a steering committee and why do you need one? Steering committee, as I'm sure you all know, is a group of cross-functional executives whose alignment to the solution is going to be needed in order to proceed with it, okay? And it's really important here that you identify these folks early and start to engage them now and throughout the process to formulate a better solution and help them shape the answer, okay? Now, the point of this meeting is to get these influencers on board with the work and the problem and bought into the idea that we need to change and bought into the idea of you, okay? Again, to establish credibility. You're gonna do this by structuring the meeting as a discussion around the insights that have come out of your first month in role. That's right, I said first month. So therefore, it's important to set expectations that this meeting should not take place immediately, okay? You want to schedule it during your third or fourth week because really it does require a lot of preparation. Back to my mistakes. This is one of those things that you could easily try and rush through. And I used to try when I became an independent consultant and no longer had the structure of the partner and principal over me. I used to try and build this kickoff deck as quickly as possible with the basics like project charter and organizational diagrams. And it backfires, right? Because the whole process to build the deck is just as important as the meeting itself, right? The insights you're going to uncover during those first 3 weeks are going to be the fodder for a really meaningful executive discussion that's going to establish you as a thought leader. Okay, so here's how I structured the agenda. And you can find these slides and a full PowerPoint template for this kickoff deck, along with all the talking points you need. We'll pop it in the chat, but it's also in the community with its own space, so it's easily identified. I structured this deck into 3 sections. Again, this is going to be about 60 to 90 minutes. Try and get 90 if you can, all right? The first section is going to share the problem statement and your approach. And here you're going to be easing people in, right? Listen, foster discussion, and get buy-in that this is a problem worth solving. I also want to make sure in this period that the steering committee feels like they have the freedom to share their perspective of the problem and potential solutions, all right? Again, you shouldn't encounter as strong of an airing of the grievances here with an executive audience, but there will be some, right? And I think it's important to give the people permission and space to express their opinions and how they feel about this problem. Now, next section is around this insights discussion. Plan to spend 45 minutes here, on just 2 pages. And what you'll do is structure a discussion around emerging insights. Simple slides, okay, but meaningful insights. And at the end of the meeting, the third section will always reserve 15 minutes to share how you plan to solve the problem. And here, what you're trying to do is get their buy-in on how they want to engage, how they want their teams to engage. And as you share how you will solve the problem, they will often have helpful tips to help you skip steps or move forward faster, right? And so that's what you're trying to seek in this section. So 2 important notes as you run this meeting. First, you're the facilitator, but you should position and enable your client as the lead presenter, okay? Not me. I'm usually going to play a role, particularly in the discussion, but prep the client on that middle section of insights. Second, and this is a nit, but it's super important. And I have learned this because I am a horrible proofreader and speller. Always spell everyone's name right and always pronounce their name right. It is really a credibility killer when you misspell or can't pronounce a senior executive's name, especially someone who is a different ethnicity than you. Take the time to get this right. All right. So this is a quick view of a much deeper deck that you'll find in the community. But in that community, we have a PowerPoint template. And each slide in the deck has the clean template for you to populate, as well as a description page that provides the scripts and formats for each slide. Okay, I'm not going to go through each page because we could spend hours on this, but it's going to give you the PowerPoint format, the script, and importantly, the tips on what you should be listening for and pay attention to, and prompts for how to engage an audience in discussion. Okay, so have these ready and perhaps even put these in the notes of your final slide so that you know what questions you should be asking and you know what you're trying to get out. Again, so you can support your client through this discussion, right? If they're the lead, your job is to ask the questions, kind of bring the discussion out of the group or rein that discussion in to keep people on track, right? We've also included pages for project management, like the team charter, roadmap, data requests, so all the stuff you know you need to do. But you know that takes time to create it. So just use what we've built for you. Okay, now the prep. As I alluded to before, what looks like a simple deck to create is actually going to require you a lot of preparation. Okay, remember, we're going to allocate 2 to 3 weeks to this. The takeaway is this: you are not preparing slides. You are using 3 weeks to prepare to lead a discussion. Okay, so let's look at the plan to do that. If we go back to week 1, this is where you were defining the problem and exiting the building on Friday with the problem defined simply on 1 page. Okay, now during that week, you're going to be having all of your initial conversations with your primary client, that team, perhaps their leader, and any kind of key friendly peers within that group. Okay. During those conversations, you're going to be asking the right questions, but you also should be asking for data and any previous materials that people have created or artifacts to help you get smart quick. Now, in week 2 and 3, you're going to shift focus to the key stakeholders outside that immediate team. Okay. So here's what we do. First, I'm going to identify the people across the organization. And I use a Excel-based tool to keep this straight, okay? Like, this is not easy because there's always a lot of people in matrixed organizations with different roles, different seniority levels, and different reporting relationships, which ultimately impact their perspectives and politics. So here, I use this Excel to document this and just keep it organized, okay? We've provided that in the community. And then from this and with your client's guidance, you're going to identify those senior leaders who should comprise the steering committee. Okay. Once that's done, you want to enable your client to formally form that steerco, write them the email, right? Help them with the script, and then schedule that meeting now in week 4. Okay. Because usually to get on those calendars, it takes time. All right. Now, as you're identifying those stakeholders, you're also going to identify the key subject matter experts that you need, and you're going to start to schedule interviews with them. Okay. You're going to want to gather their perspectives, data, information, and do it in a really organized way. And to do this, we've developed an interview guide so that when I'm doing this, I'm following a written Word document guide so that I am giving the right context, I'm asking the right questions, and I'm taking a really structured approach to gathering this information. Okay. We've provided this template in our site as well, and it has scripts, tips, a format, everything you need to make this snappy. This is one of those key things that I think separates those of us who were big firm consultants from people that were not, because we know that this is a structured part of the process that you learn in your first, in my case, my first case, but your first study case, whatever you called it, in the firm. Okay. Now, week 4, you're taking those learnings from all of those interviews and you're packaging up into the deck and you're planning the meeting discussion. And you're starting to socialize those materials, okay? You don't want to go into the kickoff deck with the materials cold. Obviously, your client's going to weigh in on it, but you also want to make sure you share it with his or her senior executive, who would be the executive sponsor of the steering committee, and any kind of key friendlies that you've met throughout your process to validate that your insights are going to lead to the right kind of discussion you're trying to have. Okay. It's really important in this meeting that you do this so that you're going in with the right context and messages, and you do kind of understand the different political perspectives that are going to emerge in that discussion. Right? Which, by the way, I think is fine. I think it's good to have different opinions in that conversation. It really leads to a more fruitful discussion, but you want to know, you kind of want to prep for what's going to be said so that you're not trying to, organize like a contentious conversation on the fly. All right. So then you're going to have the meeting in week 4. And the last step is also important, which is following that meeting, you're going to immediately ask your client and perhaps the executive sponsor for feedback, any adjustments on your approach. Here, I really want to understand what they thought worked and what didn't work so that we don't repeat what doesn't work in one organization that, might work somewhere else. I want to know if we played the politics right. And I want to gut check my read on people in the room, right? Here, I'm trying to understand who really will be our supporters and who might be, a naysayer that we're going to need to manage a little more closely. Okay. All right. So there you have it. That's your first 30 days to successfully kicking off a project. We went fast through this. I hope we made it concise and snackable. All of the resources you can find on the community. And I hope you take away just a couple of tips, and I'll repeat them. 1, on your first day, you're going to go in with a mindset to build a relationship first. 2nd, you're going to build credibility by making things simple, okay? And showing that you can make change happen quickly, even in small ways. And 3rd, engaging a steering committee in an insights-based conversation is really important to gather the learnings you need to build a holistic and accurate solution that you can actually go get buy-in for later. So thank you so much for participating today. And we look forward to seeing you again in March. The topic in March is going to tackle how to propose and win work. So not client work. We're going to focus on your business. And again, please let us know what you thought of this, what worked, what didn't work, what you'd like to see more of. And we'll see you in March. Thanks.